How's it going, guys and geeks? Welcome to Geek Critique. My name is Dakota. After over a year of never really going anywhere, our MCU timeline version 6.5 is finally getting some serious views, and it's in no small part thanks to WandaVision and all the questions people have. Thank you to all our subscribers, new and old, who found our channel through our MCU timeline. This video is for you. Well, WandaVision is now over halfway finished, and we can start to piece the timeline together some and tentatively place it on our MCU timeline. But the show also has some pretty significant timeline inconsistencies and downright flaws that we're going to get into in just a second. Let's first discuss what we know based on what's been presented to us. The first date given is August 23rd. It's a unique moment in the MCU. Perhaps the only time ever that the entire length of the story revolved around a specific date, in this case, Episode 1. As for right now, it's unclear if this date has any actual meaning beyond the dinner party they threw for Vision's fictional employer, Mr. Hart.
Stop it! Stop it!
I don't think this is supposed to reflect August 23rd in the real world in any way, and I'll explain why in just a moment. We also get a date from Agnes as to her and Ralph's anniversary, and she claims June 2nd to be that date.
The only way Ralph would remember our anniversary is if there was a beer named June 2nd.
Again, we don't know if this will have any significance. I don't think so, but some are theorizing this could be a reference to the day in 1692 when the Salem witch trials began. Oh, and before we forget, please be sure to like the video if you enjoy our content. Jumping forward to Episode 4, we finally have some concrete information as to the real-world timeline of the series, as opposed to the decade-jumping sitcom of WandaVision. The episode begins with Monica Rambeau returning from the blip. She was gone for 5 years, the same amount of time that elapsed between Infinity War and Endgame, and in that time, her mother, Maria Rambeau, died after 2 years. In that time, S.W.O.R.D. changed its name, but kept their acronym and logo, and Tyler Hayward became the acting director. After 3 weeks of being back, let's round it to 21 days, Rambeau makes her way to S.W.O.R.D. headquarters, which appears to be in either Florida or Georgia. Presumably having left S.W.O.R.D. headquarters to New Jersey immediately, and then arriving the next day, she is sucked into the Westview Hex. 24 hours later, Darcy Lewis arrives to set up camp outside the Hex with S.W.O.R.D. and other agencies. Within minutes, it appears she senses massive amounts of CMBR, most likely due to Wanda's manipulation of reality around her, and Darcy also discovers the sitcom WandaVision. Throughout the course of that day and night, they see 3 episodes of WandaVision play out, 1.5 of which appear to be live at the time of their catching the episodes outside of the Hex. The first episode appears to be a rerun that they catch. Immediately afterward, in Episode 2, they see some of the events that must have occurred on the previous day, as this is when the S.W.O.R.D. drone crashes in Wanda's yard. But the scene where Monica Rambeau appears at the pool meeting likely occurs in real time for the S.W.O.R.D. team on the other side of the Hex, as Agent Jimmy Woo is capable of interacting with it live.
Wanda, can you read me? Over.
The day and night cycles within Wanda's fictional reality do not correlate with the outside world. Monica Rambeau is shot out of the Hex at the same time in the real world as well as Wanda's fictional reality, confirming to us that they're now catching somewhat live performances. Episode 5 gave us a better look at what's actually happening, and how Wanda's reality now appears to be somewhat entwined timeline-wise with the outside world. We begin this episode on day 24 since the blip returned everyone back to life. For those counting, the blip brought them back on or around October 2023, some 8 months before the events of Spider-Man Far From Home. An upcoming episode appears to show that in Wanda's reality, they'll be celebrating Halloween. While we don't know if this will coincide with October 31st in the real world outside the Hex, it would make the placement of this series more concrete. Using some of the dates that the show has given us in episodes 4 and 5 and trying to extrapolate an actual time frame from those is an exercise in madness. The dates make no sense. If you were to count up the ages of the Westview victims from the years they were supposedly born in to try and get a date range, it's less than conclusive. Remember, we're trying to find a date range in late 2023. 1986 plus 38 is 2024. 1971 plus 41 is 2020. 1990 plus 29 is 2019. Even accounting for the 5-year blip disparity, this makes no sense. Similarly, Wanda's own birth year is confused by the same scene. Jimmy Woo says,
Quick history on our subject. Born in Sokovia in 1989.
Which is just seconds later followed by a graphic claiming her birth year is in 1988. Which one is it, Marvel? Obviously, the answer is 1989. The script takes priority over data graphics that Marvel's outsourced to another company to create, but it still really bugs me. Marvel does a fantastic job of keeping its canon down pat, but one thing they have consistently dropped the ball on is timeline consistency. And occasionally the internal logic of the timeline falters because it's all over the place. That's why you have channels like Geek Critique and others trying to make as much sense as possible out of the MCU timeline. Marvel Studios need someone specifically tasked to keep their chronology intact, so we don't have more 8 years later disasters again and again. Personally, that would be a dream job, as I'm already doing it for fun now. It would also be nice having someone who could, in some official capacity, help explain the timeline or timelines plural within the MCU. A director of chronology, perhaps? If that position opens up, I'd love to work with them. Anyway, we also learned that Wanda was 10 when her family died in Sokovia, an event which likely occurred on March 30th, 1999, meaning that Wanda was likely born between January 1st and March 30th, 1989. Perhaps it's no coincidence then that Elizabeth Olsen was born almost exactly dead center between those two dates, on February 16th, 1989. Noting that Wanda is 10 when her parents died and comparing that to the age her children are when Sparky dies doesn't seem coincidental either. Wanda's story begins 9 days prior to the events of Episode 5, when she broke into S.W.O.R.D. to retrieve Vision's body. This was just over 2 weeks since she had returned and fought with Thanos. This could help explain her collapsing mental state.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
But the show isn't finished yet. We'll be doing a later timeline breakdown once this is all said and done, as well as timeline updates for all upcoming Marvel movies and TV shows. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we post updates. If you'd like to help out in a more direct way, please be sure to check out our Patreon. But thank you for watching. If you'd like to check out our complete MCU timeline, at least the latest version of it, please be sure to click this card. And if you'd like to see a breakdown of the first 20 films in the MCU, we have this 20-part series called When Does the MCU Take Place? Be sure to check those out. Have a good one.